and I know that the teachers who are listening can relate to this. You're so powerful within the classroom that you actually are improving your students' cognition simply by the way you're interacting. And as an example, you can use narrative language, that is, what you actually say to the children in order to improve their thinking skills on the spot.
Hi, I'm Ron Spronberg, co-founder and CEO of Hi Mama. Welcome to our podcast about all things early childhood education.
Lynn, welcome to the Preschool podcast.
Hey, it's great to be here with you today, Ron.
It's great to have you on the show. You have a background in child psychology. How has that shaped some of the work that you're doing today?
Well, that's a really good question because I am a pediatric psychologist. There aren't a lot of pediatric psychologists, at least in America. And I've always worked on multidisciplinary teams. So while I was trained in child psychology and my doctorate is in general psychology, I've worked with occupational therapists, physical therapists, developmental pediatricians my whole life. So I have to say that the speech pathologists and occupational therapists with whom I've worked have really shaped the research that I'm interested in and the activities that we write in all of our books.
Oh, interesting. So having that different perspectives from different experts and different fields has helped you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful because, in any specific field, you can be kind of siloed, paying attention to only the research in that field. But we pay attention to research in kinesiology, auditory neurobiology, all sorts of broad areas. And I really have to credit the OTs and the SLPs for bringing those bodies of literature front of mind for me.
And I guess in particular with early childhood education, we all know that, focusing on development across all the domains is super important. So that's interesting that also sort of from the more academic perspective that has been beneficial for you. So you have spent quite a bit of time in the research space, and we love research-based practices in early childhood education. Have you also spent any time on the practical side?
Yeah, so I have been in practice since 1994, and for the 10 years before that, when I was in graduate school, I worked in the inner city of Los Angeles. So I have had the benefit of seeing children from, 4 months of age to 17 years of age for 30 years now.
Wow. And so you've taken your research, you've taken your practical experience, and what's the focus of your work today, bringing that all together?
Well, I started out as a, general clinician, a regular child therapist. Kids would come in and we would play, et cetera, and that was back, 30 years ago. And what I observed, I happened, Ron, to have a master's degree from USC in physical education, and that I got that before I got my doctorate. And I noticed 30 years ago that if I bounced balls or if we shot basketballs, children opened up with greater ease. And so I started to be really interested in, why does, bouncing balls and even playing tennis, I've swum with children, I've played tennis with children. I really started to go, gosh, this is different than general, what I was trained basically in graduate school. And it turns out that especially in the past maybe 5 years since fMRI has improved and they're using diffusion tensor imaging, we're really learning that movement is very important, not only for language development, but for cognition. And so my work now is really interesting. What I do is I teach applied activities to professionals all over the world. I just got back from China. To enhance self-regulation, cognition, and thinking skills in children. The specific population that I love to work with most is about 4 years of age to 9, but I'm about to go meet some high schoolers on Friday, and we'll be doing these motor to cognition activities with them in a high school. So it really does work for everybody, even up to like somebody who's 72, 85 years of age.
Interesting. And what always fascinates me about conversations with folks like yourself is I always feel like there's so much more we're just starting to learn about development in the earliest years and development across all age groups. We're really just at the tip of the iceberg, I feel like sometimes.
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, the occupational therapists and physical therapists knew 30 years ago that we move to think, and there are actually publications that go back that far ago. But only recently, in the past 5 years, are we really applying the movement literature and the auditory neuroscience literature to child development. So it's a very exciting. Like I've got this really killer preschool. It's a 6-hour training that I just wrote, and I'm going to do it starting in the winter all across the United States. And we're going to be incorporating music, movement, and narrative language in order to improve children's thinking skills. So I really have to say, Ron, that because of social media and all of us interacting in Scotland and England and South Africa and China, all of us are interacting together. And I think that it's really improving the application of science to the everyday practice of our preschool teachers and early educators.
That's actually fascinating. So let's stay on that one for a moment. I noticed that you do put quite a bit of effort into your own digital content. You have social networks, you've got a website, and it looks like you spend quite a bit of your time or effort making sure that your work is received in the community and that conversation is happening. Why is that important to you?
Well, I really feel like all of us are ambassadors on behalf of children. And when we apply research to practice and we actually have wonderful activities, and not just me, I mean, there's all sorts of Michelle Garcia Winner, we could Leah Kuypers. There are so many of us who, before social media, before 2009, we were all just working individually with our individual clients. Well, now we can all be force multipliers, and we can improve the lives of children all around the world with these research-based tools, strategies, and activities. So I feel a duty, and I do all my social media by myself. I don't have a team. I do it all, everything I write, everything I post, either I create it or our graphic designer, Megan Garcia, creates it. And then Wendy, who's the co-author in Bloom, and then Rebecca Comizio is my co-author on 70 Play Activities. So we just feel a duty to the children and to the educators to bring the science to everyday practice.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I always want to encourage our listeners and all early childhood educators out there to get involved in that online community, because there is so much great content and great conversations and discussions happening, so we can all be learning about different practices. So let's get into that. You mentioned applied activities. Let's talk a little bit more about practical tips and suggestions for early childhood educators when it comes to research-based development and practices.
Well, I interact with a lot of early educators, and it was so great when I got your question, what would be some practical tips? I think there are 3 things that I would love early educators to know that maybe people aren't talking about that much. The first thing that we really need to know is that the limbic system in a young child's brain is basically evaluating, am I safe, vulnerable, or dangerous, in a matter of milliseconds as they walk into a classroom or as you greet them at a door. And so I think that step 1 is to really make sure that we're creating emotionally and physically safe social environments for our children. And we just wrote Bloom Your Room. It's actually, the galleys are just going to print right now, so it should be out by about October 15th. And basically, it's a art collection, an activity collection that's an extension of our book Bloom that encourages teachers to create cultures of kindness in the classrooms and teach children what the actual interactive skills are that help everybody feel safe, connected, collaborative, and well cared for. So I think that emotional safety piece is the first important part.
Interesting. And I know a lot of educators out there know that, providing children with a safe environment and the general environment being a place where they feel comfortable is important. But again, linking that back to why and the research behind it is interesting. Okay, so number 2.
Yeah, and I think that, Ron, the important part here that I hear, like people email me and I love it, and I talk with them on Twitter and on Facebook, and we put a lot of research on our Facebook page. The thing that I used to hear the most from teachers was, I buy into all of this, Lynn. And, you're speaking to the choir. I'm just not sure what to say, think, or do. So tell me, in the moment when the kid's melting down, or in the moment when the kids just hit the other kid, what do I say, think, and do? And that's why in Bloom we wrote 200 mantras, and we extend that in Bloom Your Room, because I totally get that. Sometimes it's confusing, and everyone thinks, well, we got to consequence the kid into a new behavior. But the truth is that we teach children, we fill them with skills through our personhood. That's why early educators are so important. The relationship is just central to the brain's ability to learn these social, emotional, and cognitive skills. So that's the exciting part about our current work, is that we're really trying to give you tools instead of just giving you philosophy.
Awesome.
The other thing that I really, and I know that the teachers who are listening can relate to this, you're so powerful within the classroom that you actually are improving your students' cognition simply by the way you're interacting. And as an example, you can use narrative language, that is, what you actually say to the children, in order to improve their thinking skills on the spot. And there are 3 things that I usually teach the teachers in my 6-hour brain workshop, and that is that you can teach children, as an example, sequencing skills. Sequencing is an executive function that's very important to child development. And sequencing is so simple, Ron. It's just the understanding that things come in order. First we do this, then we do that, then we do this, right? Everything's as simple as 1, 2, 3. And when children start to recognize that their life is full of sequences and patterns, they're better able not only to think, but to exhibit inhibitory control. So the example that I give is that if I have a preschool kid, who is highly energetic and gets so excited when they come to school that they just run into the classroom and they barrel over everyone's Legos or blocks, what I do is I stand at the door and I say, Jonathan, let's breathe, because we're going to manage our energy right now. Let's breathe and let's look at the classroom. Step 1, look at the classroom and make a decision about where we're going to walk to in what order. So we have them preview. We call it reading the landscape, or reading the room is what Sarah Ward calls it. And then he understands that looking is step 1. Making a choice regarding where you're going to go to is step 2. And then actually taking the action to get there and choosing your path is step 3. That simple act. See, what we do, I think we make the mistake of saying, slow down or make a better choice. I hear that a lot. If the child could make a better choice, he'd make a better choice. So what we want to do is make the executive function skill of sequencing and understanding this easy as 1, 2, 3. We want to make it so transparent that the child is better able to manage his own body by learning, as an example, a sequencing skill.
Interesting. Okay. And it makes sense, when you think about it. Now, speaking of sequencing, was that tip number 2, or is that still coming?
No. So one thing that we like to teach is sequencing. What's the 1, 2, 3 of this action? And then I love to help children tie a bow on things. So when the child is able to read the landscape, make choice about the path he's going to go to, and then when he gets there properly and he hasn't run over everyone's blocks, we walk up to him and we signal with our hands that we're wrapping a bow on it, that he actually used his executive function skill, the skill that we've talked about, because he's his brain's best coach. He used it really effectively and efficiently. And, we tie a bow on it and we give him a high five. And now he's becoming the best coach for his own brain and his own body. And the children get so excited by it. It's so much more effective than, there was a better choice, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. And you explain it really well, sort of this concept that I think a lot of educators are familiar with, which is, we want to move from this mentality of teaching children to, them teaching themselves almost. And you're just there as a conduit to help empower that. Really.
That's exactly true. Then the other thing, and I know that we don't have that much time, so the other thing that I really like to talk with preschool teachers and elementary school teachers about is helping children experience the felt sense of slowing down. Because Most of the kids I work with have attention or learning challenges, and they tend to have high energy levels and they don't self-regulate well. So in musical thinking, we actually created 2 musical notes, quick Rick and slow mo. And we actually use these musical notes, and you don't even physically need them. You just need to know the concept. We help children experience physically what it feels like to move quickly and to move slowly. We can do that with marching. We can do that with drumming. We can do that with clapping. We can do it with lunging. So Quick Rick is basically in a 4/4 measure. He's a quarter note, 1, 2, 3, 4, and slow-mo is a half note. So once we physically march with the children or lunge with the children or move with the children to show them the difference between moving in quarter notes and moving in half notes, then you have a communication strategy, Ron. You can say to a child, well, you're about to raise your hand because the teacher's asked a question. Do you want to raise your hand in quick Rick, or shall we be moving in slow-mo? And I really like teaching children that strategy because now they know what it feels like to slow down.
Right. And this kind of goes full circle to what you were talking about earlier with how closely movement is connected with thinking and learning, right?
Exactly.
Cool. Very cool. Okay. That covers off some excellent practical tips. And I think you also mentioned you have a couple of books that you've authored or co-authored that also have some great practical tips. Maybe you can just speak to those quickly and where people might be able to find them.
Sure. Well, all our books are on Amazon or on my website. They're easy to find. Bloom is the parenting book that we wrote. And the Bloom philosophy permeates everything we do. Right now I'm making what's called the Kinetic Classroom, which is going to be an online training portal in order to help, everybody's going to have access to it, help people kind of use more movement in order to enhance cognition. And the Bloom philosophy just underlines everything. 70 Play Activities is the book that took me 4 years to write. Rebecca Comizio wrote some of the executive function activities in it, and it really is the body of all of our cognition work. So it's called 70 Play Activities. And then Bloom Your Room is our social emotional art collection, and that will be coming out next month. So hopefully we're providing educators with applied research and really truly practical tools and strategies that they can use every day in order to improve the cognition and the social emotional lives of children.
Which we love on the Preschool podcast, so thank you. And one more question. I know you've already given us a lot of advice and great tips for our educators out there. What's your one tip to early childhood educators just starting out their careers, entering the field of early childhood education? Do you have any advice for them?
I do. I think that right now we are such an overwhelming information age that sometimes you can feel inadequate in the beginning, like you don't know enough. And so what I just want everyone to know is that your personhood, how you enter a room, how you view the children, how you get down at eye level and interact with them, your kindness and caring, that within you makes you a pivotal agent of change. So if you're ever feeling like you don't know enough, just be your very best true self, and that is just a terrific beginning.
Awesome. Great advice, Lynn. And if people want to find you online to learn more about your work and your books or any of your other activities, where would they best find you?
Well, my website is my name, Lynn Kenney, LYNNEKENNEY.com. We're really active on Facebook. It's Dr. Lynn Kenney, and I send out research and tweets and activities on Twitter as well.
Lynn, this has been a wonderful conversation. I absolutely love having the conversations where we connect research and science, the why of development, with practical tips for our educators. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, my honor. It was a joy to speak with you. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed our conversation, don't forget to subscribe for more episodes and leave a review. The Preschool Podcast is brought to you by Hi Mama. If you're anything like the thousands of teachers listening to the Preschool Podcast, you know how long it takes to fill out daily sheets, child portfolios, and lesson plans. And that's where Hi Mama saves the day. With an easy-to-use interface built by teachers for teachers, Hi Mama can cut the time you spend on documentation and parent engagement in half. Create and send beautiful daily sheets, photos, videos, and messages to parents in seconds, saving you time in your busy day. Podcast listeners can get a free tour with one of our community advisors. Go to HiMama.com and click the